Well, all right. Kenzie, thank you again for the new intro outro music. Love it. So, damn near it's another beautiful day here in Colorado. It feels so good out. I know my daughter Megan completed that line for me. Speaking of, Megan is a lovely, talented, and creative young lady. Um, she designed my new BFOD logo, and it's great. I love it. Now, she also makes handmade candles and sells them through her Puget Sound Candle Company. Now, each candle is made with love and quite a bit of work. It's getting to be gift time, and her candles will fit the bill for anyone you love. So please visit her website. Just Google Puget Sound Candle Company. She's got a lot of great scents, and well, she has common sense and she has good candle scents. Well, she also makes damn good sourdough breads. That's just for the pleasure for her and her friends and her coworkers, and me and Kenzie. Uh, I need to visit her and Kenzie again soon. Get some more bread and maybe make another podcast with them. So, welcome back. Barrel full of Daryl. That's me, Daryl. Music, movies, and some other good stuff. Let's start with the music as we normally do. Now, over the course of this podcast, I have discussed two musicians who died in aviation crashes, Randy Rhoads and Stevie Ray Vaughan. Unfortunately, there have been many musicians who have died in this manner, and today I will discuss just a handful of them with you. I'd like to start with the late, great Buddy Holly. He was born in Lubbock, Texas in 1936, and he died at the age of 22 in 1959. Now, that's a very short career for someone who made such a huge impact on modern music. He started out as a country and western act, but quickly changed to rock and roll. He set the standard for bands to have two guitars, a bass, and a set of drums. And his appearance was very unique, wearing Ivy League clothes and horn rimmed glasses and standing a little bit pigeon toed. And he was also known for his stuttering vocals. In 1957, the year of Daryl, he released the song That'll Be the Day, which went to #1 in the US and the UK. Now, 2 months later, he released another major hit titled Peggy Sue. Now, he only released 3 albums, one with Buddy Holly and the Crickets, and 2 solo albums. He also released 28 singles. Now, prior to his death, his writing was prolific, with enough songs to release 10 albums posthumously. Now, he was a big influence on the Beatles, Bob Dylan, the Rolling Stones, Eric Clapton, and Don McLean. Now, the latter, Don McLean, released the song American Pie in 1971 that pays tribute to Buddy as the day that the music died. I'm sure you've heard that song. It's great. Now, on February 3rd, 1959, while on tour, very icy cold tour up in somewhere in the Midwest, but Buddy chartered a small plane to get him quickly from one gig to the next. He and 3 other musicians rode in the plane. But shortly after takeoff, due to pilot error, the plane crashed, killing Buddy and the other 3 musicians, as well as the pilot. No survivors. It was a greatest hits album, and god damn, every song is great. Definitely a greatest hits album. I've dropped some of my favorites in the playlist, by the way. Okay, now let's chat about a guy named Jim Croce. Jim was born in Philadelphia in 1943 and died in 1973 at the age of 30. Excuse me. He was a folk artist and a singer songwriter. Overall, he released 5 studio albums and 12 singles. But he did not gain popularity until the release of his third album in 1972, titled You Don't Mess Around with Jim. As with other artists that I discussed, Jim appeared on the scene with a unique style and songwriting. I think of them as songs for the working class man. Now, some are humorous and some are just beautiful ballads. Prior to his death in 1973, he released 2 more albums, Life and Times and I Got a Name, from which many singles were released, some posthumously. During his tour for the Life and Times album, he died in a plane crash on September 23rd, 1973, Louisiana. And over the course of 3 years, Jim had really hit the big time. I recall listening to his hits. You Don't Mess Around with Jim, Bad Bad Leroy Brown, on AM radio. I also recall watching him perform on TV shows such as The Midnight Special. Pretty amazing, great memories. So also give him a good listen to the songs on the playlist. And now we come to John Denver. Wow, what a talented artist. I'm sure you all know about John with songs such as Rocky Mountain High, Sunshine on My Shoulders, and Take Me Home Country Roads. At least I hope you do. Now, he was born in New Mexico in 1943 and died at 1997 at the age of 53. So he's an old man compared to Buddy Holly and Jim Croce. Now, he was a country and folk singer who released 33 studio albums and 44 singles. Now, he also starred in the movie Oh God with George Burns, as well as other TV shows. He died in 1997 when he was piloting a light home-built aircraft, which he crashed into Monterey Bay near Pacific Grove, California. He was the plane's only occupant. Now, he had a lot of experience as a pilot. He also owned a Learjet, so he clocked a lot of hours in airplanes. But in this crash, in this home-built, I guess it was a kit, it was determined that he was unable to switch fuel tanks. The tank selector valve was supposed to be located between the pilot's legs, but instead it got positioned behind the pilot's shoulder. Stupid. Yeah, basically it was a snafu in the plane's design. But I've added songs on the playlist. Take a listen. Now, I cannot leave this discussion without mentioning the band Lynyrd Skynyrd, who basically defined the genre of Southern rock. And you got to be hiding under the proverbial rock if you don't know about them. They formed in Jacksonville, Florida in 1964 with Ronnie Van Zant as the lead vocalist. And these guys, man, they really burned up the airways in the 1970s. And certainly you've heard the songs Sweet Home Alabama and Freebird, right? So in October 1977, they chartered a plane bound for Baton Rouge that crashed and killed Ronnie Van Zant, Steve Gaines, Cassie Gaines, and all the other band members and crew were seriously hurt. Now, this crash came just 3 days after the release of their 5th studio album, Street Survivors. And en route, the plane had just simply run out of fuel and crashed into the woods. Now, here are a few more names of artists that have died in airplane crashes: Patsy Cline, Ricky Nelson, and Richie Valens. And there are several more that I've not mentioned. So please have a listen to all their songs on my podcast, on my playlist. Well, that's enough talk about death. Let's have a word from our sponsor. Well, hello there. My name's Dr. William T. McDonald, and I am the local family doctor and veterinarian here in Scratch Ankle, Alabama. Now, if you're planning a trip to visit us here in the lovely South Central Alabama area, then I have you covered. If you take ill, or if any of the animals that you bring with you take ill, I got you covered. Damn it, Elsie. Beauregard, get back in that barn. So, you come see me if you happen to fall ill. Oh, damn cows. So, my farmhouse is a half a mile west of the Piggly Wiggly. Jesus. Bingo. Bingo, hush. This is crazy. So if you're standing at the front door of the Piggly Wiggly, that's a half a mile to your left. No, your other left. Oh my God. I'm gonna have to do this again some other time. Bye. And we back. Sorry, I still had that voice. So let's talk about a movie. Let's stay with the theme of airplanes. Well, first, let me say this. I know some of the movies I discuss are not available for free streaming. My apologies. But if I had to limit my discussion to free movies, the search alone would take up about half of my creative time. And I would get tired and probably a little bit cranky. However, they can be rented for about $3. Believe me, if I pick a movie to discuss and it costs as much as a gas station hot dog, then it's worth it, right? I would hope you agree. Okay, so now for this week's movie, sticking with the theme of airplanes, but on a happier note. Now, way back in 1980, a comedy was released titled Airplane, and stylized with a exclamation mark. It was written and directed by David and Jerry Zucker and Jim Abrahams. Now, these guys, this trio, they were famous, perhaps infamous, at making slapstick comedy films. Now, if you're not familiar with their movie Airplane, then perhaps you've heard of the Naked Gun movies. Very popular, very funny. And there's 3 of them. And like Airplane, very funny. That's 2 varies. So Airplane is similar to the movie Blazing Saddles by Mel Brooks, and that no one in Hollywood would dare to make it today. As with Blazing Saddles, Airplane has quite a bit of non-PC scenes and dialogue, but they are freaking hilarious. Now, the story arc occurs during one overnight plane flight from LA to Chicago. The actor Robert Hayes plays Ted Stryker. He's an ex Air Force pilot. He's got PTSD from flying in the war and a lot of his buddies killed. Julie Haggerty plays his love interest, Elaine. Leslie Nielsen, who also stars in the Naked Gun movies, he plays a doctor on board. Now, Lloyd Bridges, father of Jeff and Bo Bridges, plays a demented manager in the Chicago control tower. And Peter Graves plays the pilot. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar plays the co-pilot. There's also an autopilot named Otto, OTTO, and he's a large inflatable dummy pilot. And whenever there's a lot of shit going on in the cockpit and everything's messed up, and he inflates, and the aircraft returns to normal flight automatically. So here's the situation. During the flight, dinner is served, and there's a choice of fish or steak. All of the passengers who eat the fish get food poisoning, including the pilot, co-pilot, and navigator. Now, Ted Stryker, he's on this plane, the guy with PTSD, and when asked if he can take over the flight, he's very adamant that he cannot do it. But Elaine talks him into it, says that he's the only hope. So he relents, and he ends up saving the flight. They land very roughly in Chicago. So that's the story arc, and within it are many scenes that are just very hilarious. For instance, it shows a nun reading the magazine Boy's Life, and a boy is seen reading the magazine Nun's Life. Also, Ted Stryker, he's very talkative about his time in the war and his love for Elaine. He ends up sitting next to 3 different people during the flight, and all of them commit suicide due to his ramblings. Now, there's 2 black guys that are seated next to each other, and they only speak jive. The flight attendant asks what they want for dinner, and she cannot understand a word they're saying. So a passenger steps up and says, "Excuse me, stewardess, I speak jive." And she does. She and the black guys, they speak jive, and it's a good thing they had the closed captioning on for that. Now, there's a girl passenger on board in a hospital bed with an IV who's flying to Chicago for a heart transplant. A flight attendant walks up and offers to play a song on the guitar, a sweet spiritual song. And everybody's digging it. Everybody's singing along, loving the song. But at the chorus, she swings the guitar around and it dislodges the IV. Now, very comically, not very reality, the girl starts squirming like she's dying and her face is all puckered up, lips drawn up and everything. And it's very funny, and it was my son Jake. That's his favorite scene in the whole movie. He used to crack up so hard over that. There's a few of the funnier scenes, but there are also a lot of verbal and visual gags throughout the movie as well. One time the doctor says to a flight attendant, "These people are sick. We need to get them to a hospital." The flight attendant says, "A hospital? What is it?" He says, "Well, it's a big building with a lot of patients, but don't worry about that for now." And later on, the doctor says something, and the stewardess says, "Surely you can't be serious." The doctor says, "I am, and quit calling me Shirley." And throughout the film, the control tower manager says at different points throughout the movie, he says, I picked the wrong week to stop smoking. I picked the wrong week to stop drinking. I picked the wrong week to stop taking amphetamines. I picked the wrong week to stop sniffing glue. So every scene in this movie has a gag of some sort. Really, it's 90 minutes of nonstop mirth and hilarity. It grossed 171 million on a budget of 3.5 million. That's great. The writers received the Writers Guild Award for Best Comedy, and its reputation has grown substantially and is now considered one of the greatest comedy films ever made. Now, I've only touched the tip of the iceberg here. There's just too much funny stuff in this movie for me to do it justice. So I do recommend you watch it. It is probably one of those that you'll have to pay $3 for. If you want to see a really funny movie made a long time ago with a lot of craziness, it's the one to see. Okay, word of the week. Sabot. 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 You may know this as a shoe that's hollowed out from a single piece of wood, like a clog. But there's also another definition. It's also a device which ensures the correct positioning of a bullet or a shell in the barrel of a gun or cannon. And it's either attached to the projectile or it's just inside the barrel and it falls away after it leaves the muzzle. Now, my first encounter with this device, I was an engineer working for General Dynamics Ordnance and Tactical Systems, and we were working with the Swedish Army to develop a ballistic round for their cannons. And we did, in fact, design and ended up using a sabot to assist the payload out of the barrel. It was quite a bit of fun. Got a trip to Sweden out of it anyway. Joke of the week. I have an irrational fear of speed bumps, but I'm slowly getting over it. Thanks, Kenzie. Okay, I got a bonus. A second joke of the week. A son comes home on leave from the Army paratrooper school. His dad was curious, asked him how it went. The son says, well, on the very first jump, we were all queued up near the door. The jump master was a really big, mean guy who stood at the door and shouted, jump, to each trainee. When it was my turn, he yelled, jump, but I froze up. He yelled, jump again, but I couldn't move. He then said, boy, if you don't jump, I'm going to bend you over right here and fuck you in the ass. The father says, well, did you jump? The son says, yeah, a little at first. Okay. Question of the week. Now, last week I asked you, what is the origin of oil? And I'll tell you, it's not dinosaurs. I know I was taught that growing up, and it's just not true. But it is a fossil fuel formed over millions of years from the anaerobic decay of organic materials, particularly plankton and algae. Now, 70% of the world's oil deposits were formed in the Mesozoic era, about 60 to 250 million years ago. So it is basically a marine sediment. Now, they may have found dinosaur skeletons in oil deposits, but that doesn't mean they contributed to it. That's like saying bread is made of bugs because a fly fell into the batter. New question of the week. Commercial airplanes can weigh hundreds of tons. Now, the paint alone on a commercial jet weighs over 1 ton. That's hard to imagine. So how is this plane able to take off? What the hell, right? And how does it even remain airborne? Hmm. My engineering listeners probably know that right off the bat, or maybe they need to be reminded. Thought for the week. What is the sound of one hand clapping? That's right. You guys all got it right. There's no sound. And always remember that you are unique, just like everyone else. So don't forget about the playlist on Spotify and Apple Music. I have yet to develop one for YouTube, so I apologize to my YouTube listeners for that. Haven't quite figured out how to get there yet, making a YouTube playlist with songs, but I'll keep at it. Now, you may contact me by clicking on the send me a text button in the episode or directly at bfodpodcast@gmail.com. By the way, don't forget that the podcast episodes have an option for you to support my show. This is a feature that allows you to send me some spare change each month. $3 to $10, something in there. So your donation can help me buy anything from a gas station hot dog to a few more edibles each month. Well, thank you again for listening. I hope I pass the audition, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye for now.